Hey there, I'm Andrew Meatrich, and welcome to today's breaking news episode. We've got two explosive stories coming out of Germany that you absolutely need to know about. First, we're diving into the staggering spike in anti-Semitic crimes that's turned Germany into a danger zone for Jewish communities. Then we'll expose how the new German government is doubling down on border controls and deportations that are sparking massive controversy across Europe. I used to work as an analyst for a state-run media outlet, but I chose freedom of speech over top-down directives a long time ago. Support this video with a like and subscribe, because these developments could reshape Europe as we know it. Tomorrow, the news could change everything. Don't miss it. Now to the first topic, the alarming surge in anti-Semitic crimes plaguing Germany. In just the first 3 months of 2025, German authorities recorded 1,047 anti-Semitic crimes, including 27 violent attacks and 2 attempted murders. This isn't just statistics. This is human suffering on a massive scale. Since October 7, 2023, there has been an average of 32 anti-Semitic incidents per day in Germany, up from an average of 7 in 2022. The pattern is crystal clear. The government registered a total of 5,164 anti-Semitic crimes in 2023, a 96% increase over 2022. We're talking about property damage, threats, physical assaults, and even murder attempts spreading across German cities from Berlin to Coburg. The breakdown reveals a disturbing truth. 554 ordinary crimes, and 11 violent acts committed by right-wing extremists. Foreign ideology accounts for 267 crimes and 6 cases of violence. Religious motives drove 145 crimes and 5 acts of physical aggression. Left-wing extremists were responsible for 15 incidents. But wait, there's more. The statistics show only the tip of the iceberg because many crimes get registered with delays. In May 2024, officials recorded 793 cases, but by June's end, that number skyrocketed to 1,759. The Federal Criminal Police Office warns that real numbers could be far higher. Demonstrating banned symbols has become routine across German streets. Swastikas and Hamas signs appear with frightening frequency, not just vandalism, but ideological manifestation of the same hatred that once led to genocide. You see the pattern, right? This explosion of hatred isn't happening in a vacuum. Joseph Schuster, president of the Central Council of Jews in Germany, called these numbers disturbing but sadly unsurprising. Listen carefully to what he said. They reflect the scale of hostility and hatred that Jews face daily. Just imagine that for a second. Daily hatred in modern Germany. And here's where it gets even worse. Swastikas and Hamas symbols are becoming commonplace on German streets. We're witnessing the return of terror symbols that once led to the Holocaust. As per German police statistics, over 90% of anti-Semitic incidents are committed by followers of the far right. But let me repeat that. Jewish community leaders doubt these figures because cases with unknown perpetrators automatically get classified as far-right extremism. The reality? This poison runs deeper than any government wants to admit. What's absolutely shocking is how October 7th became the turning point. Schuster explains that since then, we observed dramatic escalation of anti-Semitism in Germany. The Hamas terrorist attack in Israel triggered a new wave of Jew hatred in German society. But here's what makes my blood boil. Schuster demands decisive state action, saying we need not rhetoric of sympathy, but a state that consistently fights anti-Semitic crimes in all their manifestations. The Left Party's Clara Büngner proposes reliably funded educational initiatives and consultations for victims, but she criticizes authorities for criminalizing legitimate Palestinian protests. She argues that fighting anti-Semitism gets no help when lawful protests against Israeli military crimes in Gaza get branded as anti-Semitic. This political tug-of-war continues while Jewish families live in constant fear. 76% hide their Jewish identity occasionally. 34% avoid Jewish events because they don't feel safe. Online, 24% avoid posting content identifying them as Jew. Let's talk about our second topic, Germany's border control crackdown that's dividing Europe. Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt announced that Germany will extend its temporary border controls beyond a mid-September deadline and intensify deportations of rejected asylum seekers with criminal records. This isn't just policy adjustment, this is a fundamental shift. Federal police numbers deployed daily at the borders were stepped up to 14,000 from 11,000. Between May and July alone, 9,254 people were turned back at German land borders, with most recorded cases from Afghanistan followed by Algeria, Eritrea, and Somalia. The French border saw over 2,000 rejections. But here's the controversial part. Germany has already deported 2 groups of convicted migrants to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, most recently returning 81 people in July. Chancellor Friedrich Merz promised a tough crackdown on irregular immigration, claiming this is the only way to stem rising support for the far-right Alternative for Germany party. A spate of deadly attacks blamed on asylum seekers fueled public fears during the February election campaign, where AfD scored a record 20%. Members of Europe's Schengen area can temporarily reintroduce border controls for up to 2 years in response to serious threats like terrorism or large-scale unauthorized migration. Merz's government tightened checks when taking power in early May, moving to reject most asylum seekers, sparking outcry from human rights groups. Berlin also plans deportation flights to war-torn Syria, where dictator Bashar Assad fled to Moscow in December. According to ministry data, most border rejections occurred at the French frontier, followed by Poland, Switzerland, and Austria. This year, Germany recorded 42,000 illegal border crossing attempts, preventing 22,000. Here's where it gets even more intense. Friedrich Merz, the front-runner to become Germany's next chancellor, relied on votes from the far-right AfD to push an anti-migration motion through parliament, breaking a long-time taboo. You won't believe this, but the German parliament elected Friedrich Merz as chancellor on 6 May 2025, after he failed to be confirmed chancellor in the first round of voting, a situation unprecedented in Germany's post-war history. Even Angela Merkel publicly rebuked Merz for cooperating with the AfD. Germany's centrist parties had previously made a point to avoid cooperation with the far right in any capacity, a position grounded in the country's post-war never-again mentality. Now Amnesty International is slamming these deportations, calling conditions in Afghanistan catastrophic, with widespread torture and extrajudicial killings. What do you think? Comment below. The political earthquake happened when Merz advanced 2 anti-immigration measures needing AfD support to pass. One non-binding motion succeeded, weakening the taboo against working with extremists. Critics argue Merz shattered the firewall mainstream parties erected to keep far-right forces from power. Chancellor Olaf Scholz warned that cooperating with AfD damages democracy, while Catholic and Protestant churches condemned the move. The Central Council of Muslims accused politicians of chasing far-right positions on immigration, stigmatizing migrant groups and threatening social cohesion. Deportations to Afghanistan represent the first since Taliban takeover in 2021. Dobrindt emphasized these removals cannot remain one-off measures. Berlin works to organize flights to Syria despite ongoing civil war aftermath. The implementation faces challenges including housing refugees at borders, federal state consent for deportations, understaffing within federal police, and compelling other countries like Italy and Greece to accept rejected asylum seekers. We live in times when Europe's political landscape shifts by the hour, and decisions made in Berlin today will reshape the continent tomorrow. Germany, once the beacon of European unity, is now at the center of 2 explosive crises that threaten the very fabric of democratic society. The surge in anti-Semitic violence and the collapse of migration consensus aren't just German problems, they're warnings for all of us. If this video brought you value, hit like and subscribe. You're not just supporting this channel, you're investing in your own awareness of the forces reshaping our world. We're building an honest, English-speaking news community here, and your support helps it grow. Tomorrow brings new challenges, new developments, and new insights you need to hear. Stay with us because understanding these patterns could be crucial for your future. The Europe we knew is changing fast.